Hi everyone, welcome back to Casual Watch Talk Live. You're joined by Sam and Jason. How have you been, Jason?
Pretty good, Sam. How about yourself?
Yeah, not bad, thanks.
Nice.
We thought we were going to have some guests, but then maybe they'll join us in a bit. So you'll have to you just put up with us two for the time being. But we've got an interesting show. We wanted to talk about watch movements. I made an upload about Seiko where I was sparring a little bit with Dave and Ricky from Scottish Watches about Seiko and Seiko's pricing and the movements that they put in them. Jason, you saw it, didn't you? And you wanted
Yeah,
to wanted me to expand on a few of my points.
yeah. Especially as a newer watch collector still, because it's I don't want to be too literal about the movement. You know what I mean? And overlook good watches because I feel like I've heard too much from one side of the argument or the other one.
Yeah, and this is actually a good point, Mike. You make a good point there. Movement only part of the watch. Design, finish, brand, story, and image all go into it. Absolutely. Yeah, you are right. But I wanted to show some examples of movements, what the movement itself costs, what other watch the movement is in, and then see whether that changes people's minds about the value of certain watches, not just Seiko's. I'm not just going to pick on Seiko, but other watches as well. So I think we can go through that, and then obviously, if you guys let us know in the comments what you think. But Jason, should we kick it off with a wristwatch check? What you're wearing today?
I'm wearing my Zen 105
Yeah,
UTC.
it's a good one.
Oh yeah, I love this thing. It is a Sleeta SW330 TAC 2 movement. Speaking of movements, and I love this watch. It's up there.
Yeah, and is that what NATO is that you've got on there?
Oh, sorry. Oh, I feel bad. This is the gray fluted NATO from Mushi Watch Straps, which
Oh,
is
I've not heard of them.
the official sponsor of the watchrolling.com podcast.
Oh, little plug. Paid
Yep,
promotion. Where's the
yep.
paid promotion?
Paid promotion, and they're veteran owned by a gentleman named Robert. He's an Air Force veteran, and he's sponsored my podcast. Great straps. The fluted NATO. There's something about. I think the first fluted I got was from the gray NATO, and I just really like the fluted more than the seatbelt because I feel like it keeps the watch on my wrist a little better than the seatbelt one.
Yeah, do you find I can't remember if I had a fluted one. I had one that looked like a Breitling, the one that comes on Breitling watches, and I think that had
Yeah,
the. Does it stop the stretching at the where the holes are?
it feels like it, and the fluted, especially the Mushi one, it's the first NATO I've had where I don't feel like the holes are getting pulled.
Yeah,
Like I can get it. I've had some seatbelts that get just right on the wrist, and I have it for everyone that's watching. I have a 7.5-inch wrist, or 19.05 centimeters if you use the metric system, which I'm not against. And you know, the holes don't feel like they're getting stretched out. Like it feels like it sits perfectly. And I know you can adjust, the holders and stuff like that, and kind of get it all set up. But overall, yeah, I feel like the fluted and it handles my heavier watches very well. Like my TSAR, that thing doesn't go anywhere. And on some seatbelt needles, it slides back and forth unless they're super thick. So yeah, I like the fluted a lot.
awesome. I'm wearing. I know I've been wearing my speed timer a lot recently, but I thought I would wear my other Seiko, which is a little bit fitting for
Oh,
what we're
nice.
talking about today. This is a turtle, but if you notice, I'll make myself full screen because I've got a big ego.
Yeah.
Um, it's so there you go. So it's actually a modified Seiko turtle.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's not only is the bracelet the Uncle Seiko razor wire, but
Mm-hmm.
it's got the Marine Master hands on it. And not only are they the Marine Master hands, but they're actually there's a guy I think is in Norway that makes them exactly right. So they're brushed and beveled at the edge, so they look exactly like the Seiko Marine Master
Mm-hmm.
hands. It took me a while to get hold of them. Also, it's got the domed sapphire crystal on it.
Yeah.
And the reason that I'm wearing it today, because I'm likely to give some stick to Seiko, and I just want to show people that I do regularly wear Seiko watches. That my daily is the speed time in this one. We replaced the movement in this because this was one of the Seikos that I had, along with an SKX and also the first ever Paddy one that looked a bit like the 52 MAS. All three Seikos mechanical Seikos that I've owned with similar movements to this have all gone wrong. Either the movement is defective or the movement needed maintenance. And I did a whole show on my channel with Spencer Klein. If anybody's into vintage Seiko, Spencer Klein is one of the Seiko restorers. In fact, one of the best ones. He's so booked up now. He's got his own YouTube channel, Klein Vintage Watch Repair, I think it is. But Spencer Klein's one of those top guys that redoes the Seiko chronographs. He redoes vintage Seikos, and he, on the watch that I had that was the Paddy, I think it was the SBDC 055, I think was the one. He actually, it started going wrong. I sent it back to where I bought it from, and then Seiko themselves wanted to charge me to redo the movement. It was a whole story. But long story short, he actually disassembled this movement, right down all the components, and found out what was wrong with it. And it actually happened to be an over lubrication. So a lot of the Seikos that I've had that mechanical have gone wrong, mid-range ones. So this is where I get my alternative opinions sometimes on Seiko movements, which is how I got into that discussion with the Scottish Watches guys, Dave and Ricky, which is also the purpose for this show. But should we, have we got any comments? Oh, Pocket Watch, hey, nice to see you. Thanks for joining.
I have a Uncle Seiko razor wire, and I use it on my Blue Lagoon. I think it's nice.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, awesome. Let's just see. We've got any guests coming in. Would you want to? Should we kick it off, Jason? I know that did. You have any questions about that upload before I dive into it? The Scottish Watches one.
Oh no, I thought it was pretty informative, and I understood. I'm still learning the guys. Who's the gentleman with the shaved head?
That's Ricky.
Okay, so Ricky, and he was doing the counter argument, right? To it.
Yeah, they both were. Yeah, so my argument was, like, long story short, was that Seiko on the mid. I love like Grand Seiko. I'm all in on that. I think that's one of the best watch technologies, arguably, except for the coaxial movement. But in the affordable watches, not the crazy expensive ones, it's probably one of the best mechanical movement improvements that's been made in recent times. Spring drive. My sort of argument was about the mid-range Seikos, so like the Turtles and the Samurais and some of that where they seem to be eking up in price, but Seiko don't seem to be improving the movement technology. Yeah. They're refining the cases. They've always done great dials, but they don't seem to be. You seem to be paying a lot for movements that don't seem to have improved that much.
Yeah, I think that's and the one gentleman was like, the average person that's spending $400 to $500 on a watch doesn't care, and I think he really nailed that point home, and I think it's something to consider, because I think it's in any kind of hobby, when you start to get into conversations inside your funnel or whatever you want to call it, where you're only having these conversations with people who like the same thing. Does something like that become that important? But I think if you're doing special editions or limited editions because the majority of people that are going to buy those are watch collectors of some varying degree, then you do something special and you make sure everyone knows you're doing something special. So, you don't throw in the standard 4R35 movement or whatever it's called, their numbering system for OEM. You just don't throw that in there, because you're A, going to charge more money, and B, you're going to insult the watch collectors that are buying, like I have a buddy of mine real quick he's from the Philippines originally, right? And I know they released that special Save the Ocean Philippine edition. It's beautiful. I don't know if you've seen it. It's beautiful. It's gold. It's got like a gold sunset on the dial. I mean, standard Seiko dial. It's just amazing. And when I looked at it, if I remember right, I think it had the same old movement, and the price was up there. And I told him, I felt like I told him, look, man, but if because he's a mechanic by hobby, works on cars and all this stuff. He's really good. But I had to tell him, like, look, but it's got like a standard movement inside, other than it looking nice. I had to tell him it's like you went and bought X car, but you threw like the Camry 6-cylinder in it. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh, really? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay, never mind.
Yeah, exactly. Jeremy, cheers. Yeah, you put a comment saying about the Scottish Watches video that I was agreeing as much as we would disagree, and I would agree. I agree with that. Does that make me too agreeable? But yes, you're right. Yeah, there were some points that I think I did agree with them on. I think mainly around Grand Seiko, because they'd seen that spectacular tourbillon Grand Seiko when they went to Watches and Wonders. Well, let me show you where I was going to go with this, just to see if I can show Jason some of the differences in watches and see whether it changes your mind on them. So if I'm going to pull up this one again, this should have the paid promotion thing on here, because Phoebus used to I used to regularly get watches from Phoebus because I think they actually make amazing watches. I've moved away from doing a lot of watch reviews. I'm much preferring doing these live stream type of things and the podcast. So I've not been doing a lot of the micro brands recently, but every Phoebus watch I ever had was solid. I also think they're great value for money. So a Phoebus watch here, we've got one that's $315 and it's an NH35A movement in there. So if anybody's not familiar, NH35 is basically Seiko own a few movement manufacturers. They own Epson, who was the printer manufacturer. They made movements. Seiko bought them. And they also own TMI, a TMI movement. So the NH35A, even though people say it's the Seiko one, it's technically TMI, which is a sister company of theirs. Anyway, long story short, it's essentially the 4R35, the NH35A. And then there is an NH36, which is the day date complication on there as well. So anyway, so we've got $315 for the Phoebus, and then juxtaposed to that, we have Alaster watch or Ulster watch, which NH35A, this is $675. Both, I would argue, are small production watch brands. Ulster, Alaster, is actually famous for, well, it was just one of those many watch brands years ago, but it's also famous for this watch being very prominent in the film Jaws. So Richard Dreyfuss's character wore this watch in Jaws. So anyway, so they've got that kind of provenance to them. But I would argue, although I've not seen one of these in person, I can tell right away that they're on par, if not slightly better than the Phoebus watches, but there's well over $300 difference. And they both use the NH35A movement. And the NH35A movement on its own, unregulated, and neither Phoebus or the Alaster say that they regulate the movements. So I'm going to assume that they're unregulated, these NH35A movements. And you can actually buy an unregulated NH35A movement on its own for $69. So essentially you're paying, and assuming that both of these companies can buy these en masse. So we'll assume that the most they'll ever pay is $69, because this is just a consumer website. So does the case and the bracelet of the Alaster make up for the extra $600, or does the Phoebus make up for the extra $200 and something? I guess I'll ask you, Jason, what do you think about, does movements matter to you? They really matter to me, but does it matter to you what movements in there and how they're timed and how they're regulated?
They matter to me at a certain point. So full disclosure, everybody, I ordered my wife the Black Tahitian Mother of Pearl dial Phoebus last night. She's wanted a sea nymph for like 2 years. They haven't had any in stock. They released them last night. It's something she's always wanted, and she's pretty informed on movements now. And I had, when I started watch collecting, purchased the Quartz Phoebus homage. They had a super long reference number, I can't remember, but it was just a black like Submariner homage with quartz movement. But when she saw that watch, and I think I got it for like $120, she couldn't believe it. She's like, wow, it's got sapphire crystal. It's really nice. The bracelet's done pretty well. Just the overall, the sunburst on the dial, the brushing that was on there. And so I think the NH35 and that movement for her is fine because it's a fun watch. It's something she's going to wear on the weekends. She's not going to really time anything in her life for that. It's just something that she thinks is attractive. She knows the 35 is going to work. She knows it's going to, as long as it's not a defective, model, it's going to run. Mm-hmm. And she's seen enough of a Phoebus as far as design and manufacturer to know that she's getting, like you said, like a pretty tight little watch for a good price.
Yeah.
It's a mother of pearl dial. I don't know exactly what Tahitian black is. If anyone else knows, please tell us in the comments. But, it's a good looking watch, and she's wanted one, so she's going to get one. And then I think for like the Alsta, I think that's whoever it was that mentioned like the provenance earlier. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's got a little provenance, and I think that's even a fun provenance, right? Like to say you were in Jaws, and that Richard Dreyfuss character is pretty funny. So, I get it. But who was it earlier? Mark said, or Jeremy said, fun logo for the Phoebus.
Yeah, I like that actually.
And I agree with them because I think that this might be a hot take and people can punch me in the face if they want, but I like that Phoebus logo better than I like the Alsta logo.
Yeah.
And I think the Phoebus logo is symmetrical. You automatically know it's them. Is it an octopus or a kraken? I don't know, but like
it's actually the King Octopus logo.
Yeah, he's cool. He's an octopus, right? He's there to party. And I like the Alsta one, but the Alsta one looks like it was designed about the time that Jaws was made. Like 70s.
Yeah. Well, I actually had one of those. It was a vintage one. So we did the NH35A. So do you think it matters that the movement itself is around $70 and you can pay? What do you think's the most that you would pay for an NH35A movement, or is it all about the design? You think it would depend?
I think for me, it's a combination of stuff. It would have to be because I have a Helm Von Natu, and I got it aftermarket because I got tired of being on the wait list.
Oh yeah,
and it's an NH35. But, one of the watch fan gave me a good deal. I got the box papers and everything with it. And it's just built like a tank, man. It's so nice that my buddy bought the, what was it, Komodo or the Kuriburi. I was on the wait list for the Kuriburi. I got it. He wanted a watch, and he's like, oh, I love that thing. And I told him, I said, well, it's got an H35. He's like, what does that mean? He's a mechanic. So I told him how it works. He's like, oh, that's great. I'll take it. So he bought it off me. And because he knows that 35 movement's going to work for him, and all he wants is a handsome watch, a watch that looks like it could take a pounding. But Helm, their manufacturing of that watch is really good, man. Like they're just, the quality's there. It's big, they're beefy, but there's no rough edges on the sharp edges. There's no burrs. If there's brushing, it's done right. If the dials are clean. There's nothing underneath the crystal. Like, the hands line up, like the second hand hits where it's supposed to. All these little things that we look at, the overall construction's made pretty well. They give you 2 extra straps, that you get the paperwork, you get a cool little box. So I think all that kind of lines up to where their MSRP price is like $375, I think. And you have to wait a long time on a wait list, but to me, it's at that price range, it's perfectly fine. I think if you go over like $500, you better give me something serious, like serious additional stuff for me to consider it.
Yeah, exactly. Should we do another example as well? See if you change your mind about another movement. So this is actually one of my favorite. I quite like this movement. It's one of my favorites, and I think it's actually a clone of a 2825, ETA 2825. And this is the Miyota. This is the 9015. Miyota, very famously owned by Citizen Watches. And thankfully, they've started using this in their movement. So I actually favor this over the Seiko equivalents, personally, this Miyota movement. But I don't like the Seiko 8000 series, especially the one that's like I think it's the 8215 or something, which got extremely noisy rotor and it doesn't hack or hand wind.
Yeah.
Whereas this 9015 actually, I think it's based on the 2824. Somebody will correct me in the comments, but this movement itself is $110. So we've stepped up here. It can be regulated. It's a good quality, solid movement, and this watch very famously is available in one of the Walbrooks, but also it is actually available in one of those Ulsters. I'm going to say this wrong, but it's available in this one. So this is $1,157. So in theory, you're paying for the case and the bracelet.
Yeah, it's a funky bracelet.
Yeah, you're paying $1,400. Well, £1,400 in this case. So say $1,600 for the case and the bracelet. So does that make it worth it? The other thing as well is that if you look on this caliber corner, which is great, it will also show you the other watches that movement is in. And we've got an actual old favorite in here. We've got Boulder. So a Boulder is using that same movement as well. And this is another paid promotion, I guess, because Boulder I used to review a lot of Boulder watches, but that Boulder watch that we just looked at, which I think is the Odyssey. Let's just have a look. I think it's the Odyssey. Maybe not. I think it was this one. Let's just see if that's got the 9015 in. Oh, that's got the Solita movement in, so maybe they've upgraded it since. But that's got a Solita in it for $799. So that's got even a step up again with the movements. So do you think that would change your mind about paying $1,157 for a 9015 movement in this watch versus?
A little bit, because I actually did my homework in preparation for this one, and
we've got guests coming in. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Hey, sorry, Jason. Hey, Pocket. Hi.
No.
Hey, how you guys doing? Sorry if I'm not looking my best. I'm just getting over COVID, so.
Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. I've kind of been off the internet for almost 2 weeks, so.
Oh wow. Well, we thought this would be a good one for you to come in because you're quite into your movements, aren't you? Especially pocket watches.
Oh, I definitely. That's what roused me up from my my COVID death to come jump in here for a little bit. I might not stay too long, but once I start hacking and coughing, you guys will kick me off anyway. But no, I absolutely love movements. So as I said, that's a big selling point for me.
Yeah, sorry, Jason, I cut you off there.
Oh, no problem. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. So I remember Mark from Long Island Watch was he. I guess a bunch of people were commenting because either he was selling something that had the Miyota 9015 in it, and he basically was like, look, this movement is way better than the 8000 series. It's way smoother. Like, I looked at it, and it's got like a 42-hour power reserve and 24 joules, and it's like 28.8, right? Vibrations, whatever. But he, he's an engineer. He was an aerospace engineer for a long time, but he was just very matter of fact of like, that 9015 movement is far superior than the 8000 series. And if you're going to get a watch with the Miyota movement in it, and it says 9015, you can feel comfortable knowing that it's going to be a solid movement and it's going to work a lot better. And he said there was none of the, I guess some of the 8015, some people said you could, or the 8000 series, people said they could feel them. They could feel the rotor moving, and stuff like that. But he said there's none of that with the 9015. So, just as a newer watch collector, if I saw that 9015, I know it's one source of information, but I feel like I would trust Mark from Long Island Watch because it wasn't like he was talking about one specific watch that he was selling. He was just talking about the movement in general.
Yeah.
So I would consider it but I mean, that Ulsta's got a cool story behind it. That was the 50th anniversary. Like I take all that stuff into account. Like when I hunted down my SRPB 09, the Blue Lagoon, you know, I know it didn't have the greatest movement in the world in it, all things considered, but it's a movement that's going to work. And I was really just buying the limited edition watch with the dial and everything that I liked. So,
yeah. Sorry, go on. Sorry, Pocket. What do you think on this? Is your real name Patrick? Sorry, I keep forgetting.
Yes, Patrick.
Yeah, Patrick. Yeah.
So yeah, Pocket, Patrick. It all goes hand in hand, either or. But
yeah. So Patrick, what's your view on this then? What do you think about watch movements and being the swathing difference sometimes, especially like NH35A, or we just talked about the 9015, the swathing difference of prices? Does that sway your opinion on it, or?
Oh, it completely does. I mean, it's that I am not afraid to spend any amount of money on a watch if I like a watch. So I'll preface it where, let's say, price doesn't scare me, but I am completely the first one to just be like, I'm not paying that much for it. And then that's kind of where it comes to with some of the, you know, the Seiko, whether it be, as you said, Epson or via Seiko, you know, whether it be a Sellita, wherever it be, you know, whatever other sort of, you know, kind of in a box movement, you know, that you just, there's a line in the sand where, you know, I won't pay that much money for it because, as you said, the case isn't worth the difference. And, you know, unless it's made out of, you know, platinum or tantalum or something really cool, you know, it just, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And so I completely sort of buy that. And, you know, all these watches, at least that I've seen here, you know, the $1,500 price range, you know, yeah, that's doable. That doesn't scare me away. But you're right, 1,500 versus 700. Why is one double the money? I can't explain.
Yeah, it's something that I always have in the back of my mind, and it's strange to me because back when I wasn't really into watches and I had my Speedmaster, I mean, on paper, I mean, it's a good movement, obviously, but it didn't have hacking. It didn't have the date complication on it, and that kind of thing didn't bother me. That it never told the very accurate time because obviously it was non-hacking, so I couldn't get it right bang on. But now that type of thing, as I got more into watches, that kind of thing really bothers me. And I tend to gravitate towards now, if I'm looking at mechanical watches, I tend to gravitate towards the more Sellita movements because I like the story there. I like the story that they had some of the old patents for the ETA movements, but then they invested in all of the state of the art movement making technology, and that at one time they were pumping out more movements than even ETA were when ETA got in that rumble with the Swiss government about not being. So I tend to go more with that, and I started off really liking Seiko, and then mechanical movements, and then really kind of going the other way on them because I had the SKX that went wrong on it. I replaced the movement in this one because it didn't magnetize. It was something else was wrong with it. We replaced it. And then that SBDC 055 that we actually dismantled and found that it had been over lubricated. So maybe I just got particularly unlucky with Seiko movements, but I certainly tend to gravitate towards more of the Sellita stuff. And I think more of the micro brands are using Sellita now, or certainly get the feeling they are.
I did a little research before the pod, and it was I don't know. I found a couple places that stated it, but I thought it was kind of funny that Sellita added one additional jewel from ETA, and was to me that's kind of like a you know what to them. It's like, oh yeah, okay, you're gonna take it away from us. Well, we're gonna clone your movement and just throw another jewel in there, so we can say we have X amount of jewels where you only have, you know.
Yeah, I wonder whether is it because I don't know why I'm asking this question because I don't know the answer to it, and I should never ask a question I don't know the answer to. Aren't they in the public domain? Isn't that why the actual patents for the movements, they either sold them or they're in the public domain, so it doesn't really matter whether.
That's what I read. That it had expired, and so basically, you know, they were already working on it, so they just took their movement, cloned it, and threw an extra jewel in. You know,
Yeah.
They'll never say it was out of spite, but maybe it was.
Yeah, somebody mentioned soprod movements. I forget which watch. There's a modern watch that's using that soprod movement, isn't there? I keep forgetting which one it is. And then, of course, you've got Mont Blanc with its movement manufacturer that it bought, and then you've got the movement manufacturer that Fossil owns that they bought that uses the gooseneck regulation system. So there is other movements knocking around. Yeah,
the STP. Is it the STP?
Yeah, I think it's
yeah. It's in my Zodiac, in my Zulu Oscar 9209.
And how do you find that?
The Zodiac?
Yeah.
By total
How's
luck.
the winding and yeah.
I like it, man. It's pretty sweet. Yeah. it's very, you know, I wish I need to pull them up side by side, but it's very similar to this case, except, you know, this case is bead blasted for the Zin 105 UTC. So the case is very similar. I say the crown's a little bit smaller and it doesn't have big old hunking crown guards like this 105 does, which I don't mind. But all in all, man, beautiful dial, very, very legible. You know, I went and bought the Zodiac, Collecting Vintage Zodiac book by the Andre. I forgot I'll mispronounce his last name because I haven't memorized it. But I was able to go back and find like what I viewed to be the first Zodiac whose dial was similar to the one I got, because the one I have, the Zulu Oscar 9209, is a modern reinterpretation and faithful recreation of some of the original ones they sold in military and post exchanges back in the late 50s and early 60s. And I'm Jason, by the way, Patrick. Nice to meet you. I'm retired Navy, so you know, like I'm newer, so like a lot of the stuff I collect are divers or military style watches. But the Zodiac's probably the classiest one I've seen yet, the classiest one I've come across as far as design elements and stuff. Like I feel like on the bracelet I could wear it out to dinner and it would kind of meet the what do we got?
My only Zodiac. But I actually love Zodiac just because I think the name's pretty cool. But I've got an old
wow. We gotta blow that screen up.
It's just a big old hunk of steel, but I've always liked it, and kind of the idea of, you know, it's an old ETA 2824, and you know, I think this thing was $1,200, and you know, I said it's got a little supposedly magic dial because it's the floating hands on the sapphire crystals.
Yeah.
So supposedly, you know, you're not supposed to be able to see it. So it's one of my shitters, but I love just cool, fun watches. So.
No, it is, and that floating hands, it's still a cool combination because they I think didn't even Zenith have a floating hands on their El Primero. I think in the last Watches and Wonders they released one. I just realized where the rest of the panel is, Jason. I actually didn't update the invite with the new time. So Patrick's coming in safe. Yeah, I think Zenith has one of their new chrono mats. I think they had like a floating hands complication on it. I could be wrong. I could be misremembering it, but let me just see if I can actually. If
I can answer a question from one of our viewers real quick if you want.
Yeah.
We had a question from the Zippo42. Nice name, by the way. He asked about Aragon watches, and I actually purchased one early in my watch collecting journey, which is still technically now, but I've since sold it. But it was very affordable. They have super duper sales. I guess they used to be called Android before, and the gentleman that runs them was a watch collector. And I'll tell you what, but for the amount of money I got the Dive Master 42 to answer Zippo's question. And the only thing I did wrong, you can go check my Instagram. It's Watch Rolling on Instagram. The only thing I did wrong was I bought the full loom bezel. Awesome built. I mean, the construction was great. Handsome watch, but the overall whole loom thing to me came off eventually as a party trick. So I sold it to someone that I knew would appreciate it, and I gave him a good price for it. But it was a well-built watch. Like I felt like if you had to get out of a jam, I always use this analogy. You could throw it at somebody, and if you hit them, it's going to buy you a few minutes, you know. But the crystal was nice. The movement ran well. It wound the action. The bezel was nice. The lume was insane. If I had bought, I think like a blue one or a black one or something, I might have just kept it, you know. But it was the whole lume dial thing. It just didn't stick with me, so I got rid of it. But I think they're nice watches for the price.
I've never gravitated towards it. Here's Jeremy with the point here. Says, to me, it's far more about the design, the dial, the case. I'm never going to work on any watches. While it's important, it's down the list. Yeah, I don't know. It is important to me. I'm going to add Todd in. So, hey, Todd. Sorry, I got the time messed up.
No problem. Do you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, you're on with Jason, and you're on with Patrick from Pocket Watch Time.
Hello, Patrick.
Hey, Todd.
Hello, Todd. Good to see you.
Yeah, Todd, we've been talking about movements. Does it factor? I know the answer to this. It does, but does it factor for you in a watch? Do you judge the price of a watch based on what movement's inside? I do. So we looked at an example of an NH35A movement that's in a watch that's about $800, and then a Phoebus that's about $315. To me, it does make a difference. Got a few people are saying that they actually prefer the design, and that's what makes them. But for you, is it what's your view on the movement situation?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Hold on here. I'm bringing everything in, so I'm looking at you on the right screen. Okay, so yeah, like when you first brought this idea up, so this is my Borealis Sea Storm 2.
Oh, wow.
Which is a micro brand. If you're familiar with Borealis, it's centered out of Portugal, I believe. I can't remember the gentleman's name who puts it together. It's a husband-wife team. Hold on. There we go. And this is a homage to the Black Pen 50 Fathoms from its original form. So you can even see the bezel on the outside is very blank plan like.
No, like a sapphire.
It's very thick. It's got an NH35. They regulate it so it runs really well. It's a milled clasp.
Okay.
The clasp or milled extension. The clasp itself is not. But anyhow, this is like a $300 watch, I believe, when I bought it, and that's perfect. It's perfect for an NH35. And how much more would I pay? I don't think I'd pay a lot more for one. I would expect a better movement. Now, since they make these in small batches, these are well regulated. But still, I wouldn't. I don't think I'd pay much more than that. I have the same issue with ETA movements. Sometimes,
okay, that's interesting.
So, if you don't mind, I know you're just getting me in here. I came loaded to bear. Is that all right?
Oh, please, please.
Todd.
So this is one of my favorite watches. This is a Glycine Air Man. This is something they came up with. So this is in remembrance. I can show you the back. This is their SST. So this is back when the supersonic transport was a thing in the concept in the late 60s.
So like the early Concorde.
Yeah. So the Concorde is the one that made it out of that competition. There was a Boeing demonstrator. I don't think it actually flew. The Russians built something supersonic. It flew a few times. I would never have been on that thing. But it's called the Pumpkin Sst because of the orange ring on the outside. And this is a 2893, which is their GMT movement.
Okay.
It's so the 2892, 2893, 2894 is a chronograph movement. And this retails for a lot, but you can buy these. I bought this new for like $800. And I really like it. This is my travel watch. You can even see how much the leather band has been used. But if I go to a 2894, which is again the chronograph movement, so that's the base. It's very similar in construction. That's the base movement of the Karl F. Bucherer Monero
That's a new one.
flyback annual calendar.
God, that thing's nice.
Thank you. You can see they've done a pretty good job decorating it. It's hard to really pick up here. So this watch retails for $7,000, but the reason they use this ETA is because it has the horsepower to run the complications. So what this is this ETA chronograph movement with a Depuis de Praz annual calendar module on top. So I think it's got like 54 joules. It's very, I mean, there's a lot going on here. I think it's got 300 and some odd moving, individual parts.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what it'll cost to. I've got a 7-year warranty on it, so I'm not too worried about it. But and I didn't pay retail. Let's put it that way. I didn't pay retail for this, but it's a superb watch. But the question is, with that base is Karl F. Bucherer makes their own movements, but this is not one of the in-house movements. But I think that thank you, KR. It's a unique watch. I love it. The point is that you can see that not quite the same movements. Again, I have to always think backwards when I'm doing this, but here are two different price class watches. So is this worth it to me? Absolutely, because you're never going to find an annual calendar chronograph for this price range. The closest thing to it is maybe 15 grand in one of the other, I forgot who makes one that's above it. I forgot who that is, but you're not going to touch this set of complications for that much money. So to me, that's worth it.
Yeah.
So anyhow, just to, add some, I guess more pieces to this.
Well, we've got another question here. This is another interesting one, isn't it? That Bill K here, he owns several manufacturer movements from Alpina, Eterna, Jean-Richard, GP, etc. If you ever need a service, it'll be more difficult. What's your view on the old in-house movements? And I mean, maybe, obviously Seiko's in-house, but in-house movements that like Kanisi that are used in the Tudors and things like that. Does it matter to you about in-house?
You mean? I'm sorry. Is that me again?
Well, anyway, sorry. I should have said. We'll start with Patrick first, and then we'll go to Jason, and then Todd. Does it matter if it's in-house movement?
Sam, that's a tricky question because the idea is, as I'm relatively aware that no matter what we're buying, we're overpaying for. And so, there's no joke, there's no affordable watch. I mean, as I said, we all know, no matter what, whether it be a Rolex for 15 grand, it cost them less than probably $300, $400 to make it. And everything else is just gravy. And
allegedly,
whether it be
supposedly.
Yeah, I'm completely okay with all the hate and shade being thrown at me. So as I said, I have a bad habit. I just talk the truth and let everything fall where it goes. But as I said, I'll do a Todd here in a second, and I'll show a watch that I completely think is way overpriced, but I bought because to me it's worth it. But in terms of in-house, I like in-house, but I like in-house only because it at least makes me think something about this movement is more special than a completely off-the-shelf ETA. And I don't mean to insult ETA. I've got some movements. It lets me feel more comfortable buying something at a bit of a higher price point, even though I know this is completely in my head. Because is it technically worth that much more? No. But in my head, I can be like, oh, well, it's in-house. And so, that allows me to go, oh, maybe that's a $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 watch versus a $1,000. And, call me a fool, call me tricked by the system, you know, but I do feel as if that does allow me to open my wallet a little deeper. And I do appreciate it, but I don't need it.
Yeah, where you feel that somebody at that watch company has got down on a blueprint and looked over it, and they've actually poured some sweat over the design, and they put their heart into it instead of just buying a kind of an off the shelf movement. I do get that idea. Like I bought into that with the Tudor Black Bay 58 with the, even though Kinesi made it for them. But Jason, does it matter to you in-house? Have you ever bought a watch with an in-house movement, or does it appeal to you?
Only you guys made me do some really quick thinking. Only my Seiko, only my SRPB09. I have my Zen, which is a Salida, right? But I don't care, man. Like, I don't care. Like this, I don't care. This thing is, I love this thing. This is, I don't even know how to explain just how much. And to whoever was talking about the design elements before, that's what this is for me. I look at this thing, I love it. I can throw all kinds of straps on it, and I know that if I travel, I can take it with me. And you know, it's a tool watch. My Fossil has my Zodiac has that ST movement, right? Well, that's technically not in house. That's a Fossil movement. Fossil bottom. Fossil gives them stuff. I've spoke with Mike, the brand marketer, but that's what Fossil said. We talked about this earlier. They asked Zodiac. They asked him, "What do you need from us?" And Zodiac said, "We want to keep our original style elements and all that stuff. We just need material support, basically." And Fossil said, "Cool. We'll open up the movement stuff to you." And then the other one I got, so I showed this before, but I'll show it again, is the Seiko mod I had built, which is the Marine Master case. I got a Shogun bezel, and it's got a NH35 in it, right? But this thing, even with the handmade case I got on it, even with the case back design for my website and all that stuff, that thing was still cheaper than I would have paid for a Marine Master online used, right?
Yeah.
And so to follow up with Patrick's comments and some of Todd's, I got this thing no one else in the world has. I love it. It looks exactly the way I wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? So what was I really paying for if I went and got that used Marine Master? Yeah, what am I paying for? You know, and as a new guy, I didn't want to. And I looked at them, and I didn't look at the Marine Masters enough. Any of the ones I saw, to go back to what Patrick said, I didn't see anything about them that I liked them enough that I would just buy it, that I would just hit click. And there's been plenty of other watches like this thing. When I saw this thing online on Sam's favorite website that I'm not going to name, but when I saw it on there, I was like, I'm buying this thing. You know, and I've never even held a Zen before. I'd only ever seen other people's stuff. So I guess maybe when I get past a certain dollar amount, it'll be nice because I guess, they make it, and I don't know. I don't know. I just talked a lot to say I don't know.
Yeah, no. Bill's saying, similar to high-end finishing, in-house movements give me more pride of ownership. That's a good one.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a good one. Go on, Todd. What's your view on the old in-house movement?
The great debate, isn't this, gentlemen? So it's a really good. My really good answer is it depends. So here's, for example, and this is what we were just talking about here. So here is an Orient. One of my like daily rotation or weekly rotation watches, right? I can never quite get. I got to think about this. There we go. So this is $110 watch, but completely in house by Seiko. Like Jason was talking about Seiko, and so this to me, right, that's important in a way because I'm like, hey, I'm getting a ton of value from a vertically integrated company, meaning Seiko, who builds everything from the hairsprings. If it's quartz, they grow their own quartz crystals. They build their own lubricating oils, or rather the manufacturing. Oh, look at the PDF. Yeah, it's a killer value, right? So let's go up you're going to see all my really good watches. By no means do I have like a ton of these laying around. Anyhow, so here's Omega Moon Watch.
Oh yeah.
So this is the Hesselite. This is the last year of the 1861. And so should I go into space accidentally, it is flight qualified. There it is. Just in case that happens.
There's more questions than answers there, isn't there? How would you? First question: how did you end up in space accidentally? And then what watch are you wearing?
Didn't you watch those old cartoon TV shows? They accidentally hit launch instead of lunch and ended up in space.
Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't name their
right. Wallace and Gromit. That's right.
If someone doesn't name their fantasy football team accidental space flight, they're really messing up.
But if I did that and I had this watch on, I could go to extra EVAs, right? I could do EVAs. But the 1861 movement, which is from the original 361, right? I mean, a lot was changed, of course, to the 861 and to the 1861. Now the coaxial, of course, is very much different. But the watch itself and the movement is part of that watch. Is it worth it? If you want a Speedmaster, and Sam sold his. If you want a Speedmaster, then it's hard to say what would do that. Now, here's the one that we've been talking about lately. This, speaking of in-house movements. So this is I got it back. Yeah. This is the Mont Blanc.
Oh, yeah.
GMT, a mono pusher chronograph. So if I push the chronograph button, I got to think backwards. You can see the discs move.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so the pointers stay stationary and the discs move. Again, like we talked about in that previous podcast, this is, chronograph means time writer. This is similar to what Nicholas Ryasek in some way came up with back in the early 1800s. If we look at the back, so we talked about this before, couldn't remember, it's Minerva. So Mont Blanc bought Minerva.
That was it.
Yeah. Hold on. This is like trying to catch a snake. If you can catch it a little bit, but it's a twin barrel, 48 jewel movement, completely in-house via Minerva, I believe. It's decorated. It's got a vertical clutch. You can see the window for the vertical clutch on the 6 o'clock where this is pointing now. It's got a 3/4 bridge, which I talked about before. You can actually see the gear train going across. And so, if you want this type of thing, one thing nice about it is that there's nothing else out there like it. It's completely unique to Mont Blanc. Is it worth it? No, I would never pay retail I bought this used. It's 2015, so it's much more reasonable to buy than a new one would have been. But so I wouldn't have spent new money on this for sure. But used money, yeah. So is it worth it? Yes, because what you get here is like you're not going to get that anywhere else. The Omega, you get the history, you get the legacy. You don't get that anywhere else. The Orient, you get amazing value from a vertically integrated. Thank you, sir. Thank you, KA. Is it KR? Thank you, KR. So, that's what I'm looking at. If you show me a Breitling with a 7750 based, like a Navitimer, and what do they want for one of those new, like $4,000 or $5,000?
No, they're a lot more than that. They're like
for the 7750 based one. I just like no.
Yeah,
no.
Maybe if I could get them 5 or 6. Yeah, because IWC use a lot of these,
right there.
Yeah.
And the Hamilton Pan Europe, I get almost a Kosk. I just put this on the time grapher. It's amazing. This is from 2016, and it keeps Kosk time. It's a little big for me now, so I might actually be selling it. 45 millimeters, I've decided is too big. But I mean, but this, what this retailed for, like, you can get these for like originally $1,300 or something like that. Absolutely. For a well-regulated in-house.
Shoot me a message, Todd.
Yeah, well, Hamilton's a good example of using ETA, not just taking them off the shelf, do they? They actually add additional function. Is functionality the right word? They modify the movements, don't they? They increase the sometimes increase the power reserves on them, and so Hamilton's a good one. Hamilton's a good one to judge other watches that are powered by ETA by, I think, because they do offer great value for money. Somebody made a comment, I don't know where it was, about the fact that a lot of in-house flourished from the kind of rumble that ETA got in with the Swiss government, and maybe that's right, but also I think it was quite trendy, wasn't it, a couple of years ago to have in-house movement. But I know a couple of people have said, well, it can be difficult to service them. I suppose there is some cautionary tales, isn't there, like Universal Geneve and some of those that you just can't service them because the company doesn't exist anymore, and you can't get the parts unless you're cannibalizing another watch. So I suppose that is one of the risks of buying in-house. But by the time that happens, I'll probably be either ashes scattered somewhere, or in the ground by the time that I have to worry about not being able to get parts for an in-house watch, maybe. But yeah, I don't know whether it sways me in-house. I like the idea of it, sure, and I think, like, your point, Patrick, it just justify the cost for me a little bit. Like JLC, I really like that Polaris, and I don't think that it's that expensive because it's got an in-house movement. Even though if you showed me something else that was that price, that had an ETA, probably wouldn't think it was that price. Even though the ETAs are just as good, and anybody can service an ETA around the world. Like, any watchmaker should be able to service an ETA movement. Let's see here. These Facebook comments are coming through weird, but it says, what do you think of the movement in the Borellum Power Reserve Chrono? Oh, you just talked about that, didn't you? The Value 7750 derived.
I don't know that one, I don't think. Borellum? Yeah, I'm not familiar.
Yeah, one of your favorite ones, Jason, the Fortis, they use a lot of the 7750s, don't they?
Yeah.
Let's have, this is Borellum here. I wonder if it's this. Oh, okay. Oh, so these are very Fortis, like a mixture between a Fortis and a Longines Spirit. Yeah. Oh, and very IWC as well. Okay. Oh, that logo's familiar.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
So there we website.
Yeah. So about $3,000. Isn't the Swiss franc sort of similar to the dollar, or a little bit more? Yeah, so it's about 3,000 to maybe 3,500. I wonder if I can switch this.
It says it's COSC certified.
Oh yeah, $2,800 US.
Okay.
So COSC certified. Yeah. Because the 7750 don't, I think IWC use the 7750, don't they?
Yes, you're right. That's a good example. Some of the very pricey IWC chronographs are 7750. Now, I'm supposedly told they're loosely based on it. They do a lot of stuff to them, but still, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a good looking watch.
It is.
Oh, wonder what I'm trying to think of what the most affordable watch that has the 7750 in that isn't. I know Dave at Detroit Mint makes one that has a 7730 in it, chronograph, and I don't think, I'm not sure how much that is. Let me have a look.
There's something. Jody did one, didn't just when we were watching, didn't you find a 7750 in some big behemoth of a watch for like $500 or something like that?
Yeah, possibly. Let's just have a look here. I forget which one of these. It's one of Dave's. He's going to kill me now for getting this wrong. Here we are. I think it might be this one.
Or does he use?
It's a movement based on a clone 7750, but with vintage 7733 style subdials. Okay, so it's a clone watch for $475. Remove that on. So
I had a Hamilton khaki chronograph that I got new discounted for like $850.
Yeah, as well, you just reminded me the old Hamilton X Patrol. I managed to get one of those for about $1,000. In fact, there's some even less on Chrono 24 actually. That has the 7750 in it. the X Patrol.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, great value for money, the Hamiltons. I actually had this, and one of the things I had that problem with the 7750 where the second hand doesn't reset back to 12, but I sent it back and they sorted it out. Okay, well, we're coming up. Let's just, before we finish up here, let's see if there's any questions from the thing. Yeah, I don't think there's any questions, but thanks everyone for joining. So we'll sign off now. Thanks again for watching Casual Watch Talk Live, and we'll see you next Tuesday at 7:30 Eastern. Bye, everyone.